Today, Bezrat Hashem, we're going to start learning a brand new book. The book is not new, but for us it's new. No, for some of us. The book is Devorah, written by Rabbi Devorah, who is also known as the Ramak. And before we start, just to give a very quick background about the book and the author. The reason why we're learning it is because we started last week already to learn many different approaches of refinement of character, of tikkun hamidot. And there are many different approaches, but one of them is taught by Rabbi Devorah. And his approach is based on the fact that we need to resemble our Creator, and the same way that the Master of the Universe has 13 attributes that he governs the world with, then we should mimic the Master of the Universe, and by that I fulfill my obligation of becoming a tzelem Elokim, an image of God. And if I don't, then I'm a disgrace in the heavens. And by following these midot, I'm able to refine myself. So, there's a lot what to say about the Ramak. First of all, he was born here in Tzfat in 1522. Born and raised and lived and died and buried. So he's a true Tzfati. And he was very young. He only lived for 48 years. And was born in 1522, died in 1570. And when he was born, he was already noticed to be a little bit different. And he was really a genius. And he started his path in the path of halacha, in the revealed part of the Torah, not in Kabbalah. And he was the student of Rabbi Shlomo Elkabetz. And already when he was 18, he got his rabbinical ordination, which is unique because it's not like in our days that you go to a yeshiva, learn 2 years, and you get a certificate. Then getting a rabbinical ordination wasn't as simple. Nevertheless, he was one of the dominating students of Rabbi Shlomo Elkabetz, who later on, of course, brought him into the world of Kabbalah, and he became the Rebbe of the generation at the time in Tzfat. So the head rabbi in the city was Rabbi the Yosef Karo, the Maran, the Bet Yosef, who wrote the Shulchan Aruch. He was the Av Beit Din. And there were many other great rabbis, but Rabbi Devorah was like a shooting star, and he very quickly became like the rabbi of the generation at the time. And of course, then the Arizal, the Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, came to Tzfat, and then started a little bit of a rival. But even though there wasn't any real rival, just that they have different approach. And the Arizal, who was younger, even though was greater, still called the Ramak, my rabbi, gave him all the respect he deserved. And when the Ramak was about to die, he died when he was young, he was 48 years old. So his disciples, the students, the community, they all wanted to know who's going to take over, who's going to be the next Rebbe here. And he said, the one who's going to see the pillar of fire in my funeral, you'll know that's the one. Which of course, that was the Arizal, and who only lived a few months after him, and he also died. But nevertheless, the Rabbi Devorah has a very, very long history of great teachings. The majority of his teachings is the teachings of Kabbalah. I mean, his famous work is, of course, Pardes Rimonim. It's like an encyclopedia of Kabbalah. Another book, Elima, another massive book. And his teaching is very, very deep and profound. If you remember last year when we were learning about the colors, the Kabbalistic part of the colors, that's from Pardes Rimonim. He's known to be one of the top Kabbalists in all the history. And still was able to teach and hold by a completely different approach by the Arizal. And they disagreed on many different things. Anyways, for whatever reason, he also wrote this book, which is called Devorah, which is the complete opposite of his work, because all his work is Kabbalah, and this is not really Kabbalah. This is more Musar. This is more a practical do and don't, and how you're going to make a mensch out of yourself. And There's many different explanations why he named it Tomer Devorah. I think we'll do a different class with a little bit more of history about the Ramak, which is important and interesting to know, and we'll throw some things here. But what's interesting here is that the Gematria, the numerical value of his name, is the same numerical value of Tomer Devorah. So, and I know there are going to be a few people who are going to be very quickly now to start writing down, so you have to calculate it without one of the vavs. Because he's renamed Moshe Cordovero, so there's 3 vavs in his name. You move one of the vavs, you'll get the same numerical value of Tomer Devorah, which is 863. So, but that's not why he called the book Tomer Devorah. There are other many reasons. Now, I will do Bemet Bezrat Hashem, Bli Neder, another class separately that we can learn about his history and a little bit what was going on in the city of Tzfat at the time. We're looking here about approximately 450 years ago. And for the local ones, if you want to go and visit his grave, the grave is right in front of the Arizal. So when you go into the group of graves, the one all the way to the left is the Arizal, to the right of the Arizal is Shlomo el-Kabetz, and right in front of them is the Ramak. And the point of the book, I mean the main thing what we're going to focus on, we're going to focus on the first chapter. We'll see how we go, and if we do well, we'll focus on other chapters. But the first chapter is talking about the Tikkun HaMidot, the refinement of character. And the entire idea behind this chapter, behind his teachings, is that I have to resemble my master. That's how it is. Inyan she'idameh adam lekono. I have to look at the Kadosh Baruch Hu, I mean, as much as I can, and then mimic his attributes. And really, how can one do that? Is to understand that the Kadosh Baruch Hu governs the world through Sfirot. Now the approach of the Ramak is different than the Arizal, because according to the Ramak, the top Sfira is Keter. He doesn't consider Da'at as a Sfira. The Arizal considers the first 3 Sfirot, Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at, and then Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. The Ramak says, no, Keter is the first Sfira, and then Chokhmah and Bina, Da'at, no Sfira, then it skips to Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferet, which Keter really is a crown. And according to the Ramak, Keter is the mediator, so to say. Through that Sfira, the Kadosh Baruch Hu controls the entire world. So everything comes through Keter. That's according to him, but we're not going to really dive into his approach right now in this learning. It's just important to know why. Because he explains, and this is something that the Arizal does agree with him, that in the Keter is hidden in the internal part of the Keter, the 13 attributes of mercy. What we say when we say Tachanun and many other times. Now, based on that, since the Kadosh Baruch Hu runs, governs, and controls the world through Sfira that is called Keter, the crown, and inside of it, in the Pnimiyut Keter, is the 13 attributes of mercy, must be that these are the 13 channels how the Kadosh Baruch Hu is relating with the world. Therefore, I have to find out what they are, how he does it, and then apply it to myself. And by that, I fulfill the mitzvah, the Adam tzich lidamot lekono. I have to resemble my master. That's really the major idea. Now, we're going to start the first chapter today. We're not going to go through the midot. I think we're just going to go through a little bit of the introduction of the chapter, which is not less important. And then from that, we'll take it, and I don't know, I think we might have to do one midah per class. I think that's how we're gonna the pace we will be able to go. Maybe even some of the classes will have to do one midah, 2 classes, and then we'll see how we go to see if we're adding the rest of the chapters. But right now we're gonna disconnect for a second the approach, the Kabbalistic approach of the Ramak, and go into a completely different type of approach, how he looks at the world, and mainly my servants to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Before we start, I have to just say a side note that we're all familiar with the dominating student of the Ari HaKadosh, who was named Rabbi Chaim Vital. But Rabbi Chaim Vital was the student of the Ramak before the Ari came to the picture. So in the beginning, the Rebbe and the student was Rabbi Chaim Vital and the Ramak. Then came the Arizal, who came to the Rabbi Chaim Vital and told him, I was sent to teach you. Who was, of course, was sent by Eliyahu Navi. At the Arizal, very briefly what the story was, that he was born in Yerushalayim, and his father died when he was a little kid. So his mother had to relocate to Egypt, because her brother lived there, and then he grew up in Egypt. And he used to go for hours and be next to the river, and Eliyahu Navi would reveal himself to him and teach him many things. And at some point he told him, okay, now it's time for you to go to Tzfat. You have to find a certain individual, Rabbi Chaim Vital, and give him over what you know, and that's it. And of course there are many other things, but we're not going to focus now on the history of the Ari HaKadosh. But originally, Rabbi Chaim Vital was a student of the Ramak. And we know, we spoke about it, we learned about it, and in the next couple of days we're also going to start learning from it. But the book, one of the many books that Rabbi Chaim Vital wrote, is called Sha'arei Kedusha, The Gates of Holiness. And we already learned that 3 years ago. If you remember, during Shabbat, we used to learn that was our Shabbat learning. But now there wasn't a camera then, so we're going to start learning it again so we can film it. But nevertheless, in the introduction of Sha'arei Kedusha, the Rabbi Chaim Vital says that the main part of a human being in this world is to refine his character. The Mitzvot and the Torah is just a tool to reach to Tikkun HaMidot. But the main part is to refine my characteristics. And if I fail with that, then I will come up to the heavens empty-handed. Well, I've have Mitzvot and Torah, but I didn't refine my character traits. So the same idea, the Ramak says the exact same thing. My main focus here is to refine myself. The fact that I have a lot of mitzvot, that's very well. But if I'm still holding anger and jealousy and judgmental and grudge and all these horrible midot, then what do I do? What good is my beard? What good is my Torah? If I learn 12 hours a day and I don't know how to control my anger, or if I don't know how to control my mouth, or I'm judgmental or lazy or whatever it is. Although if one learns 12 hours a day Torah, he's not so lazy. But nevertheless, the main part that we need to focus on, and not to neglect chas v'shalom the Torah and mitzvot. Don't chas v'shalom distort what I'm saying, that we have to just focus on our midot, which unfortunately many people in our generation, that's what they do. They deliver Kabbalah and they tell people, just be a nice person. You don't have to keep Shabbat, you don't have to put tefillin on, this is for these fanatic ones. But you just have to love everybody and accept everybody, which is very nice. It sounds very noble, but without the Torah and the mitzvot, you're missing the core. So that's how people distort the teachings of Kabbalah in our generation. But we need to focus on how do I refine myself, and this is a very unique approach. It's not the approach, if you were here last week when I went through different types of books. If you remember, we had 3 classes. We went through different types of approach. Mesilat Yesharim, the path of righteousness, and Chovat HaLevavot, the duty of the heart, and Even Shlomo, the stone of Shlomo, the teachings of the Gaon from Vilna. We went through a whole list of books. The Tomer Devorah is a completely different approach, which therefore it's very important and vital that we learn it, know it, and apply it. So with that said, if you are following, we are starting in the first chapter. I'm going to read through the book and the commentary and translation and explanations. So, Bezrat Hashem will be with us and we will be successful in our learning. So the book starts as follows. Ha'adam ra'ui she'yidameh lekono. A man is worthy and also obligated to resemble his master. Ki zeu ma'alato v'tachlito. That's his virtue. That's an advantage that only man has. Animals cannot do it, but it's also its purpose. So I have first the ability and also a purpose. And that's the purpose shel ha'adam shenotzar b'tzelem Elokim. I was born and created in the image of God. B'tzelem Elokim nivra Adam, says the Torah in Sefer Bereshit. So since I was born in the image of God, then I have to resemble my master. Now he says ha'adam. Listen how he starts the book. That's the word that he starts the book. Ha'adam. We went through this many times. In many great books, you have to see what's the word that the book starts with. Look at the book of Tehillim. Starts with the word Ashrei. There's deep teachings. Why Dafka Ashrei? And look at any book. What's the first word that the book starts? So, Tomer Devorah starts with the word Ha'adam. Not Adam, Ha-Adam. Ha-Adam is the same letters of Adameh. I will resemble. Now, when Adam HaRishon was created and he was given the name Adam, then there are different commentaries that says, why was he called Adam? So one of the commentaries says because he was created from the earth. Earth in Hebrew is Adamah. So Adam, Adamah. Adam was pulled out of the Adamah. He was pulled out of the earth. But another commentary says no, because he resembles his creator. Adameh, I will look like my creator. So the word Ha-Adam, same exact letters, different orders of Adameh. I will resemble. Meaning, Adameh La'elyon. I have to now resemble and mimic the master of the universe. And if I will be successful, אז יהיה בסוד הצורה העליונה צלם ודמות. Then I will reach to a very high level that is considered a secret of the supreme and exalted shape that is called tselem, an image, and a dmut, a figure. Now we do know that the Kadosh Baruch Hu en lo dmut aguf. There's no image to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, but nevertheless, there is what's called a secret, the secret behind the tselem and the dmut, and if I'm able to do that, then I'm able to reach to that high level. And we will elaborate on everything. Now we're just starting the book. Now what does he mean by saying that? היינו על ידי ציור ודמיון יוכל אדם ללמוד מתוך כוחותיו. If I'm able to paint some type of an imagination of the master of the universe, but I can't imagine the master of the universe, but you know what I can imagine? The format of the master of the universe. The word that he's using is tavnit. Now tavnit is not really format. Tavnit is more like a mold. Not mold that grows on the ceiling because of the water. You know, like you make a cake and you have a mold, and whatever you put in it, it will give it a shape. So I cannot imagine the shape or the format of Hashem, but I cannot imagine the image of Hashem, but I can definitely imagine the format and the mold of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. How? So he says, derech mashal v'nimshal. How can I imagine the format of the Kadosh Baruch Hu? Or I will use the word tavnit, or mold, because I can understand it through a mashal and a nimshal, a parable and a moral. And that's one of the many ways in the Torah how to understand things. If you want to go to the depth of the wisdom of King Solomon, then he says that he was so smart that he was able to give over 3,000 parables on every concept that he wanted to explain. Now imagine now I'm trying to give over some deep concepts. I have to come up with all these parables and stories and pull out some movies, and it looks like in that movie. So the Torah is so concealed and hidden that it has to be sometimes give over in a parable. So how do I imagine the image in my mind of the mold of the Kadosh Baruch Hu? How? Derech mashal v'nimshal, through a parable and a moral. What will I need to imagine? Et kochotav shel haboreh. Not the power, rather the strength, or more to say, the ability and the ways how he governs the worlds. How? And then he quotes a verse from the book of Eov that can be found in chapter 19, verse 26. And the verse says, Mi besari echze eloka. Now, the translation is not so correct, because the translation says, and from my flesh I see judgment. It says the word judgment because it says eloka. But really, if you want to go more simple, it says, through my flesh I will be able to picture the image of Hashem. Which means that if I'm created in the image of Hashem, that to some extent, that I'm not chas v'shalom painting Hashem in any ways, but there's some type of a structure of a head with mochin and shoulders and arms and a body and legs. I mean, we learned already Patach Eliyahu that he's breaking down in Tikkunei HaZohar the structure of the Sfirot, which resembles a human being. So he says, "V'al yedei she'yidameh le'peulat yotzro." If I now mimic the behavior of Hashem, נעשה דמיון מקושר. נעשה דמיון וקשר לצורה העליונה. So if I walk in the path of Hashem and I learn the behavior of Hashem and I mimic it, then what would be the result? that I now will become similar, and I build a connection to the supreme and exalted image, which again, our mind will never fathom. What's this image? She'ilu yedume begufo, if I will mimic this behavior with my actions, velo bepu'ulot, if I will mimic it with my body, velo bepu'ulot, but not with actions, harei hu machziv hatzura, which means that if I behave in a certain way, but I'm not mimicking the behavior of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, then I'm going against the Kadosh Baruch Hu. He says machziv hatzura. Machziv comes from the word in Hebrew achzava or ichzev, which is to let somebody down or to disappoint. Kadosh Baruch Hu sent me to the world, and I'm taking the image of Hashem and doing with it the complete opposite. Go and look at what is the severest sins in the Torah, and you'll understand how the Kadosh Baruch Hu uses that power for something positive, and I go and distort it for something negative. So one of them that is one of the most severe sins is all the forbidden relations. Why is it so forbidden? What's the big deal? Because the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the manifestation of yichud, of unity in the world above, is for kedusha, is for procreating in the spiritual world. Now if I take that and I mimic it in a holy way, then I'm doing one of the greatest mitzvot in the Torah, pruvu. But if I chas v'shalom take this entire department and I distort it, the same act, that's why he says, she'ilu yedameh begufo, the body does the same act. Velo bepu'ulot, but not in the action. Then I completely distort this action that is resembling the Kadosh Baruch Hu. We do know, though, I mean, it's now definitely not the time to elaborate on that, but we do know that this unity, like a unity of a husband and wife in this world, it's called yichud zun. So the ones who are a little bit more familiar with Kabbalah, you should be, we're learning Zohar every day. Yichud zun means the unity of female and male in the worlds above. Of course, it's referring to the Sfirot. But this unity in the world above, and what's the result from a unity in the world above? There's a birth of midot, of Sfirot. So the same way, if I now take this act and keep it holy in this world, then I resemble the master of the universe. But if I take the exact same act, the body functions exactly the same, but the intention and the power goes to a completely different way, therefore it's one of the most severe sins. That's one of the many reasons why we read all the forbidden relations in the holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, on the holiest moment of the day, which is Mincha. When I became observant, I was like, this is what we read on Yom Kippur? That a boy cannot be with his mother and a man cannot be with his sister. And, why would somebody in their right mind want to do that? There is a Kabbalistic and mystical reason for that, but this is one example out of many. I'm talking about procreating. How about slandering? Kadosh Baruch Hu creates the world with his speech, right? We say that every day. Ruach piv, right? Baruch she'amar v'haya olam. I mean, how many times a day we say that Kadosh Baruch Hu creates the world with dibur, which means that he gave us the exact same power to use for prayer, for learning. Now I take the exact same tool, the mouth, the tongue, the lungs, and I slander, I completely distort the godly creation of the physical tool, then I fall down to one of the most severest sins. Because not only that I'm not resembling the master of the universe, I'm completely a disappointment in the world above. The world above looks down and says, that's what you created? This is what you created. So it becomes a disappointment, and that's where he says, Harei hu machziv hatzura. So the person disappoints the shape. Because at the end of the day, I am a shape. I'm a tzelem of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Why? Shezilzulo shel melech, if I desecrate and I go against the king, hu she'adam asui b'dmut yukano, I'm created in the image of the king, ve'no noheg b'midot hamatimot. So I am a shadow of the Kadosh Baruch Hu in this world, but I'm not holding myself in the right way, and I'm going completely against for the Kadosh Baruch Hu. This is mamash chilul Hashem. This is going against the master of the universe. And he says, "Vayomru alav," and you know what's going to be said on him in the heavens? Havei chilul Hashem. This is chilul Hashem. You're desecrating the name of Hashem. This is not a simple thing. I told you already. There's no tshuva for chilul Hashem. Can't do tshuva for Chilul Hashem. Chilul Hashem means to desecrate the name of Hashem. You have to die in order to do tshuva for Chilul Hashem. And what does it say? Tzura na'a u'ma'asim ke'urim. The shape is beautiful because it's the shape of Hashem. But the actions, disgusting. Ke'urim, it's not even disgusting. It's dirty and ugly. It's dirty and ugly. Sha'al yadei ma'asav hara'im, by me acting horrible acts, machriz, he's declaring she'en lo chas v'shalom chelek b'malotav yitbarach. I'm declaring and saying, I have nothing of the master of the universe and I behave like myself how I want to. Sharei yikar hatzelem, the main part of the tzelem, which for now he's referring to the image. V'hademut ha'elyon, and the figure, the exalted figure, hen pulotav. This is the action of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, but also my action. Sharei HaKadosh Baruch Hu nistar mitzad atzmoto, because the essence of the Kadosh Baruch Hu is not revealed, it's concealed. Nobody knows anything about him. To a point that the Zohar says, "Velet machshava tfisa beh." No human thought can grasp what's the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And when the Zohar says "Let machshava tfisa beh," it's referring also to the worlds above, not only for the worlds below. Rak mitzad pu'ulotav hatovot nigna lanu. Only how can I picture Hashem is because of His actions, because He's full of mercy, He's full of kindness, He's full of compassion. So I can imagine what's going on in the world above. And since I'm able to look at the actions of Hashem, I'm also able to picture something here. Nigla lanu tuvo b'chol mili demitav. When the Kadosh Baruch Hu behaves in a beautiful, amazing way, then I can derive from that, by the actions, the goodness of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. V'zeh sibat yeridat haneshama. This is the reason why the neshama comes down to the world. Lehakir midotav, in order for me to get familiar and acquire the midot, the attributes of the Master of the universe, ve'lolechet bidrachav, and to follow him. That's the challenge. First challenge, go figure out what's the attributes of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Once you master that, now walk in his footpath. What of a great honor it is for a father that the son walks in his path. And what a great disgrace it is that the father is in a very high level and the son is not going in the path. It's a disgrace for the father, a shame for the family, and sorrow for the father. So he says here, I'll read it again, it has to be penetrated deep into our brain. V'zeh sibat yeridat haneshama le'olam. This is the cause for the soul to come down to the world. Why? Lehakir midotav. So I will familiarize myself with the characteristics and the attributes of Hashem. Ve'lolechet bidrachav. Now walk in his path. Now let's see you doing what the Kadosh Baruch Hu does. Uma yo'ilo. Now what benefit would that be for me? Okay, I'm already here. What's the benefit? Heyoto betzura elyona. Since I was created in the exalted or the supreme image, demut tavnit evarav ufeulot lo yedume lokono. I am created b'tzelem Elokim, in an image of God. And for that, I think we have to dedicate a few other classes that has nothing to do with Tomer Devorah to really explain why and what does it mean that we were created in the image of God. Because in English, it doesn't make sense. English is a very hard language to learn Torah. Because it says in Hebrew, b'tzelem Elokim nivra Adam, which means that I am created in the tzelem of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, especially Elokim and not Yud Kei Vav Kei. And what is this tzelem? So now we're going to leave it, but you'll see that in the teachings constantly he will throw to us this word tzelem constantly. But nevertheless he says, Heyoto batzura elyona, since I'm created in the image of the world above, demut tavnit evarav, the mold of my organs, and not only that, my actions, ufu'ulot, and also how I can conduct myself. Lo yedume lokono, if I do not resemble my master, it means I'm taking the image of Hashem and I'm desecrating the image of Hashem. I'm a disgrace to the creations of the universe. It's pretty heavy. Therefore, a man, well, he says a man, woman, same thing. Don't think women are exempt here. Therefore, a man has to, and it's the right way that I will mimic and I will resemble my Creator. How? With my actions. I mean, I don't know how he looks. It's not that I'm going to now put my hair to this direction and I say, oh, maybe Hashem brushes his hair to the right. That's not how I mimic Hashem. We don't even know how he looks. And he doesn't even have a shape. But how do I mimic him? He behaves a certain way. Mahu rachum, gam ata rachum. Mahu chanun, gam ata chanun. He's merciful, you be merciful. He's kind, you be kind. But here he says it in a very interesting way. He doesn't say resemble his action. He says, sheyidamel pulot haketer. Resemble and mimic the actions of the Sfirah of Keter. Which means that now he's going to take us to a journey to learn what are the actions of the Keter. That's enough. Very interesting. Now, here he says in a commentary, what's Keter? Hi achat me'eser sfirot hanagot shemanhig behem HaKadosh Baruch Hu et olamo. This is the Ramak for you. Because he says the Keter is a Sfirah. And the Arizal will say, no. Keter is Keter. Chochma bin Adat is Mochin. But the Ramak says, excuse me, I disagree with you. He says this is the first of all Sfirot. And he calls it Hanhagot, not Sfirot. Hanhaga, really Hanhaga, the translation is leadership. So when the Kadosh Baruch Hu leads, or his leadership in the world, it's called Hanhaga. Arizal more calls it a Sfirah. And there's many explanations for that too. But the Ramak calls it Me'eser Sfirot Hanhagot Shemanhig Behem HaKadosh Baruch Hu et olamo. The leadership, how the Kadosh Baruch Hu controls, governs, and manages the world is through these 10 Sfirot. And Keter is the top of one, top of all of them. Which means that if I now want to go and get the mold, the format, then go figure out what's the midot, what are the attributes and the actions that are placed in Keter. Shehen 13 midot shel rachamim elionot. What are these midot, these actions? These are the 13 attributes of mercy that we do know and all agree that the 13 attributes of mercy can be found in Pnimiut HaKeter, in the internal part of the Keter. When it comes to Keter, the translation is a crown. The act, the mystical act of a Keter is exactly like a crown that is dressed on the top, and exactly like a physical crown, there's Chitzoniyut HaKeter, the external part of the crown, which is what you see. But there's Pnimiut HaKeter, the internal part of the crown, which you don't see. But according to the teachings of Kabbalah, the Hanhaga comes from Pnimiut HaKeter. The leadership comes from the internal part that is not revealed. So now we're going to go into a journey. Let's now reveal what are these powers that the Kadosh Baruch Hu leads the world with them, and specifically they're broken into 13 powers, 13 attributes. And he says as follows, Shem 13 midot shel rachamim elionot. These are the 13 attributes of mercy, the supreme ones. And who revealed to us these 13 attributes of mercy is the prophet Micha. Micha is not such a famous prophet. The book is also a very small book, it's only 7 chapters. But nevertheless, there is a verse that now, in the month of Elul, and very soon in Tishrei, we're going to be saying this verse a lot of times. Mi el kamocha, right? So, this is a verse in the book of Micha, chapter 7, verse, it's a few verses. It's from verse Yudchet, 18 till the verse Kaf, 20. And he revealed these 13 attributes of mercy in this verse. And he says, Remuzot besod hapsukim. The hint is the secret of the verse. What is the verse? Mi el kamocha, nose avon, v'over al pesha, l'sherit nachalato, lo hechzik la'adapo, ki chafetz chesed hu, yashuv yirachamenu, yichvosh avonotenu, v'tashlich b'mtzolot yam kol chatotam. Titen emet leYakov, chesed leAvraham, asher nishbat al avotenu mimei kedem. And this is the 3 verses from the book of Micha. Very, very quickly, I'm going to translate. So, because what we're going to do right now is take all these 13 attributes of mercy that I read. This is not the ones that you say in Tachanun, Kel Hashem Hashem Kel Rachum V'Chanun Nechapayim V'Av Chesed V'Emet. I just read completely different midot. The prophet Micha says, take this verse, and I'll break down to you how each and part of this verse will be which midah of the 13 attributes of mercy, and now I will reveal to you how you have to mimic the midot of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. So very briefly, first of all, if you want to follow, this is in the book of Micha, chapter 7, verse 18, goes through verse 20, and the verse starts with Mi el kamocha, the translation, who is a God like you? And I'm just going to go through the translation now. Really what we're going to learn is every class we're going to go through one midah. I hope we'll be able to squeeze one midah per class. I think from the past, when we learned it a few years ago, it took us sometimes 2 classes to do one midah. But it's irrelevant how long it's going to take us. Now I'm just going to do the translation that it kind of starts resonating in your mind. Mi el kamocha is the first midah. Who is a God like you? Second one is noseh avon, who forgives iniquity. And if I pronounce the word wrong, please correct me. V'over al pesha, and passes over transgression. Lesherit nachalato, remnant of his heritage. Lo hichzik la'ad apo, he does not maintain his anger forever. You can already start seeing how he's starting to sow the midot here. Ki chafetz chesed hu, for he desires loving kindness. Yashuv yirachamenu, he shall return and grant us compassion. Yichvosh avanotenu, he shall hide our iniquities. V'tashlich b'mtzolot yam kol chatotam, cast into the depth of the sea all their sins. Titen emet leYaakov, you shall give the truth of Yaakov, of Jacob. Chesed leAvraham, the loving kindness of Abraham. Asher nishbat leAvotenu, which you swore to our forefathers. Mimei kedem, from days of yore. This is the verse that from that the prophet Micha reveals to us the 13 attributes of mercy, and not only that they're hidden in that verse, the explanation for each midah here, you'll see how it corresponds to the actual 13 attributes of mercy that we read. Because when we read Hashem, Hashem, Kel Chachum V'Chanun, we just first of all say it in the speed of light. Very few people actually say it slowly, Hashem, Hashem, Kel Chachum V'Chanun. Everybody's in a rush to finish. But nevertheless, this is the core and the secret of these midot. And now just to conclude, he says as follows, Im ken ra'ui shetimtze'enu bo 13 midot ele. Since the Kadosh Baruch Hu has these attributes planted in him, custom made, it's the format of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, then he says then it's worthy, ra'ui shetimatzeh bo, it's worthy and the right way that the person should be found in him, these also 13 attributes of mercy. So which means that if the Kadosh Baruch Hu has it and I'm created in his image, must be that I have it. Now you're going to be very disappointed when we go through the midot to find that most of us don't have these midot. It's in the depth of my soul maybe, but to bring it out, not easy. But that's what we want to achieve, is to dig down to the depth of my neshama, to find this midah in me. And he gives perfect example how the Kadosh Baruch Hu applies that comparing to us, and how I should do that in my life. Me'achar shehutba'u bo bivrito, since the Kadosh Baruch Hu has a covenant with us, he already delivered it custom-made, built in to my system, that with the same attributes that he has, it's built in with, I don't have to acquire it. It's me, it's in me. Now comes the big question. How am I going to find it in me? Al yadei asiyat mitzvot, by performing mitzvot, ve'hanhagot hashayachot lahem, and I will govern myself. I will the right ways to how I will carry myself, behave. I would say maybe how I carry myself. Oh, behave, conduct myself. That's a nicer word. How I conduct myself, that's how I acquire it. So I need 2 things here, fulfilling the mitzvot, and I have to now also conduct myself in the same way how Hashem governs the world. Yigrom lemidotav, now it's going to happen, I'm going to cause my attributes, sheyulidu pe'ulot yoter shlemot. So my actions will birth better actions. This is what our sages say in Tractate Avot, mitzvah goreret mitzvah, a mitzvah will drag you to do another mitzvah, and avera goreret avera, and a sin will cause you to do another sin. This is when it comes to the mitzvot. But also with my behavior. If I behave and refine myself in one way, by default, it would birth more good midot. So if I now decide, let's say I'm very cheap, and I decide to break this midah, and I go completely out of my way to be generous, with money, with my clothes, with my time, whatever it is. The first time is extremely hard. But I was able to do it the first time. The second time it's 95% hard. And the third time will be 90% hard. And the 15th time will be already 60% hard. And if I work on it over and over, eventually I will birth all these good midot that eventually, I will become very, very generous, and the complete opposite. So it says here, let's read it again. Al yadei asiyat mitzvot, by performing the mitzvot, vehanhagot hashayachot lehem, and conducting myself according to what the mitzvah is telling me to do. V'ahavta lecha kamocha, you have to love a person like you love yourself, and many other things. Yigrom lemidotav, he's going to cause his midot, his attributes, sheyulidu pa'ulot yoter shlemot, that my actions should be more full, more complete, more whole, lidamot lekono, to resemble my master. ותהיה ידיעתו את השם יותר ויותר ברורה. And by that, you know what's going to happen? You will know Hashem better. You will grasp the learning that you learn better. לדעת את השם, we have a mitzvah, ודעת השם אלוקיך. ידעת את השם. Have to know what the Kadosh Baruch Hu is and all about. But by doing that, by default, I refine myself. By default, תהיה ידיעתו את השם יותר ויותר ברורה. My knowledge and acquiring knowledge of the Kadosh Baruch Hu will be clearer and clearer. ובזה ישיג את תכליתו. And by that, you will fulfill your mission and your purpose in the world. And you know what's the greatest result? ויתרבה כבוד שמיים. And the honor of the Kadosh Baruch Hu will be greater. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה. This is really one of our greatest things that we can do, is to greaten the name of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's Kiddush Hashem. So if I will reach to my purpose, by default, יתרבה כבוד שמיים על ידיו, the honor of the Kadosh Baruch Hu will become greater. By who? על ידי ברואים שלמים כאלו. By these individuals that are whole, then the honor of the Kadosh Baruch Hu goes greater and greater. And by now he concludes by saying, now that I gave you this little introduction, now עכשיו נפרש את אותם פעולות. Now let's explain, what are these actions? What are these actions that are hidden in Sfirat HaKeter, that go out, they are birthed out of the 13 attributes, היוצאות מ-13 המידות, שראוי שתהיה פה. Now let me explain to you, what are these 13 paths, these 13 attributes, these 13 actions that you need to conduct yourself because they're already built in you. And if you're able to do that, then you resemble the master of the universe. וזה שאמר הקדוש ברוך הוא למשה רבנו, הקדוש ברוך הוא gave the commandment to משה רבנו, כל זמן שישראל יעשו לפניי כסדר הזה, as long as the nation of Israel will do exactly what I'm telling you here, here's the key. Here's the $1 million answer. אני מוחל להם. I will forgive them. Can you imagine? 40 days Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to the mountain, tries any type of combination. Moshe is a hacker. He went up to the spiritual database and he needed to hack the firewalls of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Of course, that's my terminology. Don't go look for a source. Who says that? I say that because that's what we can relate with. Moshe Rabbeinu knew that there's going to be a problem. He says, okay, how am I going to hack into the system? And eventually he was able to hack into the system, and all it took is 13 words. Hashem, Hashem, it's not really 13 words, by the way. It's much more, because every word is also written with a few letters, and each one of these letters, if you write them b'milui otiyot, you get a whole different code here. But nevertheless, Moshe Rabbeinu was able to hack the system. So what did the Kadosh Baruch Hu told him? כל זמן שישראל יעשו לפניי כסדר הזה, as long as the nations of Israel will follow this order, אני מוחל להם, I will forgive them. And therefore he concluded by saying, וסלחתי כדבריך, I will forgive as you requested. Boom! Moshe Rabbeinu gets his ticket down to the world. 40 days he goes down to the world and he ascends on the mountain, happens to be Yom Kippur, and that's the Day of Atonement. So we can actually hack into the system by applying these midot to achieve atonement and forgiveness. And everything has to be sourced in the Torah. So the source for that is in the book of Vayikra, chapter 18, verse 5. Ele advarim asher ya'aseh v'chai b'hem. These are the things which man should do and live by them. What is these things? Follow your master. Mimic the master. Learn his midot, learn his how he conducts his world, and mimic it. Is it easy? No, not at all. But at least we give it a shot, right? We're going to learn. So Bezal Hashem, tomorrow we're going to go to the first midah, mi el kamocha, who is a God like you, and start explaining it. Now I know it might be on the surface, seems like, okay, what's the big deal? 3 words. Can't you explain it in 3 minutes? No, it might take us 3 classes to explain. But what we want to achieve from here is we have an unbelievable precious secret that was given to us by Moshe Rabbeinu, who was revealed by the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Follow what I'm telling you, you will be forgiven for your actions. And especially now in the 40 days that we are focusing on tshuva, what better time to apply that? Even though tshuva has to be applied 24/7, 365 days of the year, and if it's a leap year, then there's more days, right? But nevertheless, every day I have to do tshuva. Chol yamecha yu b'tshuva, says our sages in Tractate Avot. So this is one of the keys, one of the most powerful paths to go on when I need to focus on tshuva. I'm already telling you it's not easy. The midot are very, very difficult. And you'll see all the examples that he gives. But at least we have what to aim for. If you have a goal, if you have a destination, you might take 20 years to get there, but you should get there. And if you do it the right way, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help you. You get some sayata d'shmaya or some push from the back. So Bezrat Hashem, now we have a little bit of an idea what is Tomer Devorah all about, what we need to do to apply, and from here, whatever amount it takes us, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, we're going to see what the Ramak has to reveal to us and how can I find it within me. I can tell you already that if you can master these teachings, you're going to be yourself on steroids. You're going to be in such a high spiritual level to a point. I will do a class. I told you in the beginning we'll do maybe a class, a little bit of the history of the Ramak in the book. I can tell you that the Baal Sulam said that if you don't have to read it, you just put the book next to a patient that has a machala sofanit, like a deadly disease, cancer, lo aleinu chas v'shalom, just put the book next to him, that has the power to cure the person. Just the book, not to read it even from that. And what great tzaddikim were saying about the kedusha of this book. Last year, it's almost a year since I've been half dead for 3 months. And nobody came to the hospital. I didn't want anybody to come. But I had the Tomer Devorah right next to me the whole time. Somebody brought a copy specifically. It was next to my bed the whole time. I was trying to read it. I was able to read 3 words and then pass out. But the book of Tomer Devorah, I can already tell you that if you can put yourself as a goal to master it, you'll be flying in a completely different altitude. You will be able to reach to a level of atonement and forgiveness that you can't even imagine. Besides the fact that you really get to a point that you mimic the master of the universe, no greater level than that. This is mamash no greater level than that, and it doesn't say anywhere that it's not feasible. It doesn't say anywhere that one cannot do that. You just have to put your mind for that. So we're going to concentrate on that, and simultaneously, this week we'll also start Sharei Kedusha, because these are 2 paths of a student and a teacher. The teacher is Rabbi Moshe Devorah, and the student is Rabbi Chaim Vital. It's 2 different paths, but the same idea. The whole idea behind Sharei Kedusha, it's a manual to reach Ruach HaKodesh. That's what it is. That's what Rabbi Chaim Vital says. Follow this. This is a manual to reach to a level of prophecy and Ruach HaKodesh. How many were able to do it? Probably 3. But at least you give a shot. Bezrat Hashem. So without further ado, we're going to dive into a beautiful journey into the depth of the structure and the format of Sfirat HaKeter, to be able to simplify it into actions, and Bezrat Hashem to walk in the path of the Master of the Universe. And not only that we want to achieve forgiveness, atonement, and kapara, but I want to greaten the name of Hashem. You want to have on your record that you did Kiddush Hashem. Very few people die on Kiddush Hashem, sanctifying the name of Hashem. But he says here very clearly, you do that. You do Kiddush Hashem. You sanctify the name of Hashem and you exalt His name. This is what we say so many times a day. Gadal veit kadash shmei rabbah. That the name of Hashem should be greatened and be holy and exalted. And by that you can do that. So I suggest you pay attention, turn your phones off, or whatever you're doing, and listen carefully to every word. And highly recommend that you buy yourself a copy so you can follow as I'm reading. I'm reading with the commentary, but nevertheless you can follow the text, and you want to buy yourself a copy. Some people have a very good habit that they read every day a portion of it. And in this book, for example, it actually tells you, Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, this first day, second day, you read portions of it. And it's not a lot because it's not long. You read 5 minutes a day, 7 minutes a day, 10 minutes, you read very slow. I definitely highly recommend it. And B'ezrat Hashem, we have the great honor and zchut, not only to learn the book, but we're less than half a kilometer from the grave of Rabbi Moshe Devorah. And maybe we should do some of the classes down at the cave. I think that would be pretty awesome. Shem Yazor. B'ezrat Hashem, we should be a worthy vessel to accept this limud, this learning, and also to be able to apply it. And not only to learn, to apply, but also to give it over and to teach it to many other people. רבי חנניה, בן הקשה, מרצה הקדוש ברוך הוא, לזכות את ישראל לפיכך הרבה להם תורה ומצוות שנאמר, אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה ויאדיר.